Welcome to the 2023-2024 Annual Grower Meeting video presentation for the Westside SJR Watershed Coalition. This is intended for a missed meeting makeup session. It was recorded live in Los Banos, California on January 30th, 2024. As a note, you may need to adjust your volume from time to time as the recording is not professionally done. Thank you. This video and its verification form provides for meeting requirements for missed 2023-2024 Annual Grower Meeting. It is a requirement to review the video and return the verification form. The 2024 Annual Grower Meeting video verification form can be found at www.westsidesjr.org, and it must be sent back to the Coalition. This video was shot live during the 1/30/2024 meeting in uncontrolled conditions, and as such it is not studio quality. To augment your understanding of the meeting, you can download the PowerPoint slides at www.westsidesjr.org that were used during the live session. Interspersed throughout the video are 3 simple question and answers. Transfer the answers to the video verification form described above and send back to the Coalition as explained on the form.
My name is I'm with Summers Engineering. This is part of the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. This is your required meeting once a year for all growers to attend. And I'm glad that you came. I see that the postcards arrived and you got them. And if there were mistakes on it, we're sorry. We use the best data we have available to us. If you farm in a water district, make sure that you keep your water district informed of name changes and entity changes and address changes, because they send us your information to put into our membership database. That being said, this morning, before we get started with this presentation, I want to discuss just a couple of things very quickly. And these are things that I find it a little bit, I'm not shocked, but I would think that growers would know this, that in the 1960s there was a law passed called the Clean Water Act. It bounced off a federal law, but it was done in California. We call it Quarter Cologne, and there are other names that are used for it. And so, since the 1960s, you've been regulated under the Clean Water Act. And before the 1960s, farmers were regulated at some level in the state of California. So you've always been regulated. Being regulated today is nothing new. It's something that's always happened. Contained within the Clean Water Act is a line, and it talks about monitoring and reporting. And when the Clean Water Act was passed, the state of California decided, because of the atmosphere of the state at the time concerning agriculture and its population and the current politics, they waived monitoring and reporting. And so growers were just growing along, planting, fertilizing, watering, harvesting, doing what you do, and which is greatly appreciated, by the way, not realizing that there was still regulation happening. It just, you had been given a waiver and you didn't have to deal with that. Well, new administrations come, and in 2003, the state of California decided they were going to sunset the ag waiver. And so this program was initiated in 2003. I've been in the program since its inception. I began with Weston's Water District and moved over now to the west side. I work with Summers Engineering, and we handle CCID and the exchange contractors and the northern growers, southern growers. You're in this Westside SJR Watershed Coalition. And so it sunsetted in 2003. We began monitoring in the year 2008. And so there became the monitoring portion of the Clean Water Act. And so the regulation was being ratcheted up. In 2014, the government, the state of California said, okay, now we want the reporting section. And in 2014 is when you guys were impacted, where you began to notice it. You begin to get interaction with, in 2014, it may not have been me directly, but it was Joe McGann and our staff at Summers Engineering. But nonetheless, it began in 2014 program was in its kind of, was blossoming and growing. And I wanted to say something this morning that you can't escape the regulations. We can't get away from it. See, you farm in the state of California, and unfortunately, it's not the same state that your grandfather started the farm, or whoever it was. It's a different California. The regulations are stiff, they're onerous. I get it, I understand that. But what I do, I work very hard, we work very hard to soften the regulations as much as possible, to keep any direct interaction with you and the state at a barest of minimum. And so I just ask you this morning to please comply with the program to the best of your ability. The Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, Region 5, they're after you. Their enforcement people are on the prowl. They're looking for the person that is probably a large entity that has deep pockets, that's not filling out the forms, that aren't attending meetings, whatever it may be. They're looking for that person to make an example of. They can't enforce against everyone, they don't have staff, but they're going to make an example. I don't want anybody in my coalition to be an example of this thing. So do your best to attend the meetings, fill out the forms with your best information. I said this in a focused outreach meeting a few months ago. I'm going to say it again. I don't mean to be harsh. But you all sitting here today, you manage working farms and ranches. Some of you manage extremely large operations. And I'm struck by how many times I'm making a phone call to a large operator to say, I didn't get your blue form. The little lady with 10 acres of walnuts got me the form. She filled it out to the best of her ability and mailed it to me because she doesn't know how to scan and doesn't have the capability. But large growers seem to drag their feet and can't get it done. I realize you're big. I realize you're all big. You're all engaged in what you're doing. But you got to get with the program. It should become part of your operation. That packet that comes should just be right in the stack with your nitrogen, with your laborers, whatever stuff you do on that operation, it ought to be equally as important. Because heretofore, you haven't had to engage with the state personally. That's going to change. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. So again, just be part of the, make this part of your operation. I know it's not welcome. I know you don't want to. I don't want to make you do it. And I can't make you do it. But it's the law, and we have to comply. Excellent. That being said, let's begin this morning. This is the Westside SJR Watershed Coalition. It's our grower outreach meeting. We're holding one today in Los Banos. We're going to do one in Newman and in Wesley. I'll be presenting today. I'm Paul McKinnis. I'm the watershed coordinator. Many of you are used to Joe McGann. Joe McGann has retired, and I filled his position. I'm so grateful that he felt comfortable putting me in this position. I'm awed, and I really, again, I appreciate it. They're trusting me. I want to earn your trust. I want to earn that same level of confidence you had in Joe McGann and Summers Engineering. I want you to have that same level of trust and confidence in me as well, and I'll demonstrate that to you. We have another presenter today, David Corey. If you're in the exchange contract, you see him from time to time at your meetings. As usual, the attorney, Farmer, is late, and we're going to get that guy. But he'll be making a presentation today on the nitrogen portion of this. So here's our agenda today. We're going to talk about basic deadlines. We're going to talk about some surface quality concerns, management plans and completion requests. That's going to be a big item. And he'll be talking about dealing with nitrates in the groundwater, new requirement for management zones. And then we'll highlight a few changes and have some question and answers. And hope to have that out of here about 11. Maybe a little sooner, but don't hold me to that. So this is our coalition boundary. You've probably seen this map before. We go all the way up to the mountain range, Pacific coast there, but really we're dealing with I-5 San Joaquin River between Mendota and Tracy. Essentially, that's our boundary. And so, you're familiar with the farm plan. We used to do it every year. Now it's every 5 years. You're going to have to do one for 2024 crop year. That's this year. It'll be coming to you at the end of this year. It'll come to you, and you need to get it to us by March 2025. The high vulnerable area for discharge nitrates to groundwater. This is the big item now. The state is really focused on nitrates to groundwater. There's all kinds of things happening that we're going to discuss today. But it requires you to fill out a farm evaluation plan along with the nitrogen summary report. That's the blue form. How many know the blue form? Show of hands. Thank you. And also the irrigation nitrogen management plan. That's the green form. The blue form you send back to me, the green form you fill out, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, and you keep on the farm. I think this ended in 2015. We no longer are really talking too much about it, but sediment and erosion control. Many of you were in high vulnerable area for sediment runoff, and you had to complete a plan for your farm. And it's still part of the program. And if you have any questions about that, you can talk to me in a bit. So, to highlight our report deadlines this year, they're due back by April 15, 2024. The forms are being filled out now. You wouldn't believe the amount of work and data processing we do to get the forms to you. And you would think, well, you're just sending me something in the mail. It's easy. You send me the card. That part's easy. The other part is some of you have very complex arrangements. And you farm ground, you own ground, you lease ground. And we got to know who to get the forms to. We work with our districts to get all that information. And then we got to get it into the web portal so that when you get ready to use the web portal, we want to encourage you to use that, that it's already locked and loaded. So those forms will be coming out in the very, very near future. But the blue form is due back on April 15th. And then the certified irrigation and nitrogen management plan for those of you in high vulnerable areas. And your form identifies it. You don't have to worry, am I or am I not? And by now you're used to it. It's been enough time has elapsed that if you're in a high vulnerable area, you fill out your green form and you have a certified, some of you are capable of self-certification. Others you have a CCA, maybe a PCA is qualified, and you get them to certify that plan. You do not send the green form back. The green form stays on the farm in your files. Now look, just because it doesn't get sent back to me, you're required to have it. You're required to have it in your folder or some way so that if you get a knock on the door, actually it'd be a phone call from me probably saying, hey, look, the regional board reached out, they're going to come inspect your ranch, they're going to come inspect your farm. And they have to give a proper notice. Regulation allows them to do this. And the first thing you want to do is see your information. So make sure you have all that information in your files. Look, they're not coming tomorrow. It hasn't happened in many years, but it's something they can do. And so if you've got your green form and you're in a low vulnerable area, you don't have to have it self-certified, but it does have to be filled out and put in your files. And so the annual farm evaluation plan for all growers for this year, the form is going to be returned by you to the coalition by March 1st, 2025 of next year. That form should start coming at you this December, so essentially a year from now. But I wanted to get it in there so you'll know it's coming because it hasn't come in a while. And so again, if you have a certified sediment erosion control plan, you keep it on farm and you update it as your conditions on the farm change.
Verification question number 1. As a member of the coalition, are you required to attend annual grower meetings when notified? The answer is yes. Again, the question. As a member of the coalition, are you required to attend annual grower meetings when notified? The answer is yes.
So here are the surface water quality concerns. These are really important. And this is the crux of our program. Currently the coalition is in deep conversations and discussions and meetings with the regional board about these very issues. Sediment moving off the farm. It is against the regulation for sediment to move off your farm through your tailwater or any other mechanism, even through rainwater, to move off your farm at levels that are higher than what they call background levels. So if it's a dirty creek that comes out of the mountains, you can't impact it any more than it's already impacted. I know, well, how do I handle a flood event? You can't. But you're required to do something for smaller events. You're required to have some mechanism in place on your farm to handle just average rainwater that would flow across your property, move off your property. In fact, it doesn't even have to move into a creek. It's against the regulation in the state of California for you to move water off of your farm to your neighbor's farm, unless there's an agreement. And sometimes they don't care because we're all in this thing together, I get it, but just sediment's a big issue. And why do we care about sediment? Because pesticides attach to the sediments. The first time we monitored in the creeks in 2008, sediment had pyrethroids, they had chlorpyrifos, and a couple of other constituents. It's been in the sediment from the inception of this program, and it's still in the sediment today. So there's also water and sediment toxicity. They make us send the water and sediment to a lab. They put it in aquariums essentially with creatures, and they count how many creatures died. And then they can use chemical methods to extract the chemicals out of the water and tell us what killed the animals. A concern also is pesticides and herbicides. By now you all know that chlorpyrifos is gone, right? We can't use chlorpyrifos. It was the best weapon that farmers had, really simple to use. It was well known. We understood it, but that's been gone. And the reason it's gone is because it was in the water cycle. That it's on a farm, it gets into the San Joaquin River, it moves into the Delta, and from the Delta it gets back in to the San Luis Canal and the Delta Manila Canal. And after the years, they don't notice. It's just this big cycle. And the problem with it all is every grower sitting here today will say, it's not me. See, no one's going to raise your hand and say, yeah, it's my farm. I'm the one that did it. Because we think we're all doing the best we can. And I'm not denying that. But it's getting in the creeks. So they said, no problem, we're going to get rid of chlorpyrifos. They banned it. You can't buy it or use it in the state of California, except under some very, very, very tight regulations that you'll never be able to take part of. So what do we switch to? Pyrethroids. Number one chemical we find in the water is bifenthrin. I can now, when we get lab reports, I don't even have to look at the lab report anymore, although I do. It's my job to look at them and make notes and such. But bifenthrin, and I can pick the sites. There's about 12 of them. And before you start blaming the folks in the north, because they got problems, we find them in the south. Los Panos Creek, I'm sorry, I had a brain freeze here. I'm trying to think of Los Panos Creek. You get all those things happening. In the salt slough area, we're finding them. And so it's prevalent. And I know that we got to use the chemical. I understand that. You can't just sit there and let the pests just chew your crop away and your livelihood's gone. But we'll talk about this in just a minute. We got to do something. So the pyrethroids are the big issue. And there's some trade names: brigade, capture, leverage, Baythroid, karate, and Round. We also find diuron. Diuron is, what do you call Roundup? We find it in those things, glyphosate, and these things. And so you're required to really manage these things at a very, very high level. And the reason we're finding it in the water is because it's not being managed to its best possibility. I want to say that growers aren't doing it, but it's there. And it's there every time we go. When growers quit raising the crop, when you've harvested the crop, we still check the water and the chemicals are gone. Come March, when the water turns back on, we're going to go to those sites and we're going to find those chemicals again. 9 months through growing season, and then the first month after the growing season ends, we check it, and they'll be gone. So I used to argue to the regional board, it's not the grower. They're not the ones doing it. They're not the ones totally responsible here. But it's hard to argue with the data, isn't it? Hey, it's quiet, it's quiet. I think you're getting mad at me. Not just the messenger, don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, we've got some other issues, salinity, E. coli, dissolved oxygen, pH, and we're going to talk about management completion requests. Look at the salinity, E. coli, dissolved oxygen, pH. Those are exceedances. They're lower tier exceedances. They're things that we can't do anything about. I don't know how you deal with pH. I don't know what you do about salinity. The water you get has salt in it. You form on ground sometimes it's in areas that are very saline, and there's nothing we can do about it. But the regional board isn't going to give us a pass. Someday we're going to have to address it. It'll be some major study that'll have to be done to finally, once and for all, demonstrate that, by God, the salinity comes out of the mountains when it rains and it washes into the soil, and it has for 1.5 billion years. But until then, it's something that we'll keep talking about, but not at a very high level. So here's a real struggle. We've been monitoring sub-watersheds of the creeks for more than 10 years. And during that time, if you have an exceedance twice in a 3-year period for the same constituent at the same site, it triggers a management plan. And the management plan means there are a set of actions agreed upon by the regional board and the coalition to address water quality impairments. Now, the regional board, their best practical method of dealing with exceedances is they want me to interface with every grower who applied the pesticide. Every time. To interface with the grower. Well, we have 1,800 different growers in our coalition. There's no way we can do that economically. And it's not just our coalition, it's all coalitions. So that's where the coalition kind of came from. It's like, okay, then we'll devise this method that kind of everybody's in. It's like in for a penny, in for a pound. That's why you get called to a focused topics meeting. You say, well, I can't drain. There's no way water can get off my property. Why did I get, rounded up into this thing? Well, because you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. Otherwise, it would be we're knocking on everyone's door, talking to each one individually. So we have this management plan, and we have 10 years or less from the time the management plan was triggered to complete the management plan. Complete means that we solve the problem. There's no exceedances for 3 years. I'm going to interrupt right now to point out my colleague, Mr. Corey. Thank you, sir.
Pointing out that I'm late.
I love David. He's the smartest guy I know, and I'm glad he's with us today. I was just worried about you, sir. I didn't want you to be in any kind of trouble, because I was going to send the calendar.
I appreciate it.
He's a good guy, too. He puts up with me. I think he puts up with me. So we can't have any exceedance for 3 years. Well, look, here's what happened. We started monitoring in 2008. We had exceedances right away. We had management plans the first year. On some level, we had management plans. And so if you add 10 years to 2008, that's 2018. The window's closed. And by gum, the regional board is breathing down our necks. They're pushing us. What are you doing? What are you doing? And we're saying we're doing this, this, and this, and they're yelling, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. And so we're going to have to ramp this up, and we'll talk a little bit about that this morning, but we're almost at a point where, folks, I don't want the regional board doing something drastic. So we've got to solve these problems. And you're the solution. Not me. I just give you the form and I give you the regulation. I'm the go-between. I'm the interface between you and the state. But I'm not the farmer. I'm not the grower. I'm not the one that comes out and looks at your farm and says, hey, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, fix it. We ask you to look at those things and you fix it. You have to make those changes. I'm sorry to say that. I really don't want to say those kind of things. But the regional board is really, folks, they are really serious about this now. They really want this close one-on-one interaction. They want us to send an expert out into the field. If you apply a pesticide, you were part of the exceedance in that area. You may not have been the one that did it, but you're part of that in for a penny, in for a pound idea. They want us to go out and say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Fix it, or you're out of the coalition. And there's no way I want to do that. So they tell us we're late, and they're right, we are late. So with your help, we got to get these things completed in a very short amount of time. And there are consequences if we can't finish these or complete these management plans.
Verification question number 2. Question: the pesticides capture and karate are in what class of commercial insecticides? The answer: pyrethroids. Again, the question: the pesticides capture and karate are in what class of commercial insecticides? The answer: pyrethroids.
So here's the strategy: outreach and education. Boy, the state loves outreach and education. And so we call it focused outreach meetings. And so the way a focused outreach comes to be is that there was an exceedance for pesticides. Some of it's in nitrogen for groundwater. We're really kind of talking about surface water here right now. That we had exceedances for bifenthrin, pyrethroids in the watershed. We've had 2 exceedances the last 3 years. And so we have to conduct a focused outreach meeting. That's part of completing the management plan. That's the beginning of it. And so what happens is we go to our database, we pull up pesticide use reports. You guys all have to go to the county to get that. The county ag commissioner, if you don't, the person you hire to apply your chemicals does. They get up, they fill out a form. I'm not sure quite how it all works, but it becomes public information. I have access to that information. I say, aha, it was bifenthrin in this watershed. And so I know what watersheds you all farm in, and I say, well, look at there. Farmer ABC, he used pyrethroids 4 weeks before that exceedance occurred. And so that's how your name got drawn. Not because we think you did it. Again, you're in for a penny, in for a pound. There seems to be a connection there, right? That statement. So we picked you because you used the chemical, or it was used on your property by a third party. And so we bring you into this focused outreach meeting. Similar thing to this, it's a smaller group. We talk about things that happen on the farm. We talk about the pesticides and their use. We provide sometimes audiovisual stuff to try to give you ideas and things to help you maybe do something better on the farm so we wouldn't have these exceedances. But we give you a form. It's the Management Practices Implementation Report. I put Planets Report. We want you to look at that, and the regional board is really upset. The regulators are upset because you're not checking anything. They think you come to the meeting, you look at it, you blow it off, and you just check nothing. And they think there's something you should be checking. And look at, I don't know. I don't know if there's something you should be checking. People showing up to focused outreach, are they just blowing through it? No, just to get done? I don't know. There's no way I can know that. One, I'm not a farmer. I'm a city boy. Born and raised in Southern California. Don't hold that against me. But you know, you're on the farm. You're ranchers. You're farmers. You're in the business. You do this for a living. You should be able to look at the form and say yea or nay and make a calculated judgment. Can I do that? I realize that they may be asking you to implement something more than you're doing now. It may cost money. I get that. Maybe you're flood irrigating. Maybe you're sprinkler irrigating. You know, you're gated cake, whatever it might be, gated pipe. I don't know if anyone's using any of that anymore. But you might say, yeah, you know, we've been thinking about that drip system. Well, it might be time to put the drip system in, bite the bullet. Again, I can't speak for your operation. I can't speak for, you know, your economic situation and how it works on your ranch, on your farm. But look, we've got to make the best effort we can. When you get those forms, fill them out to the best of your ability, making your best professional farming judgment on the forms. So we fill out the form, that's your part. We continue to monitor to assess the long-term changes in water quality. The idea is, they filled out the form, they said they were gonna do this, we expected it, they went back to the farm, they implemented the change, we checked the water a year later, and by God, there's no pesticide. Problem solved. We gotta wait 3 years though, but if in 3 years we don't have any more exceedances, we get to complete the management plan. So we have to demonstrate that, I just mentioned that the practices you implemented equal better water quality. So it requires, again, to stress this, folks, to evaluate your current farm management practices and implement new or additional practices to address water quality impacts. As I said this morning, you're regulated, you've been regulated from the very beginning in the state of California. The Clean Water Act of the 1960s really started dialing things in. Dave was looking at me. He's got his attorney hat on, I can tell. I'm going to be judged. You were regulated. What I'm saying this morning, folks, it's on you. I can't help you regulate it. You are. You've got to do your best to do the best practices you can on your farm so that we're not impacting water quality at the level we are now. See, it would be great to be able to show that, you know what, maybe we haven't hit the mark yet. We're not 100% clean. I don't know if we ever will be. But man, we'll be able to show them a nice trend. With Chlorpyrifos, folks, we got this beautiful trend line on a spreadsheet. I hate spreadsheets, but I have to do it. This beautiful trend line down. And I was able to, it's like, you know, man, look at us, look at our growers, man, we're together, we got it going on. It's happening in our coalition. Chlorpyrifos went away, pyrethroids now are the big thing, and all of a sudden the trend's not down, the trend is up. Steeply up. So if you get called to a grower meeting, a focused outreach meeting, you're required to attend. And look at folks, again, I don't want to be the heavy guy, but the regional board says I am. That if you don't attend the meetings, the only recourse we have is to drop you out of the coalition. Once you're dropped, I'm required to notify the regional board that you're out and why you're out, and then you're going to get a call from them and say, great, you don't want to be in the coalition, that's cool. So here's paperwork, fill it out for us. You need to file for a report of waste discharge. You're going to describe how you operate, all this stuff. I think they require $15,000 up front to even begin the process. And then you gotta monitor and report yourself on your own farm. We get to do this at a greatly reduced rate. I get it, the fees you pay are not cheap. But compared if you were doing it on your own, it's a lot less. So it behooves you to be part of the program, complete the focused outreach process. And so here's how we tell the regional board we've accomplished. We document that our education and outreach efforts to the members who should have been there where the exceedance occurred. We say, look, they attended the meetings. So I put up there, you must attend the meetings. See, if water quality got better overnight, I don't get to complete the management plan because I didn't have you in a scenario berating you about your pesticide use. So you've got to attend the meetings. That's important. We document grower implemented management practices that address water quality problems. In other words, we were able to say, yeah, they came to the meeting, they fill out the form, and those farmers, those growers, they told us we're going to do this, this, and this, and this on the ranches. They must have done those things because they said they were going to. And in fact, after a year after the focused outreach meeting, we're going to reach back to you and say, did you do that? And if you didn't, we're going to ask you why. Again, not trying to bend your arm, we want to know why, because I need to tell the regional board why. But we say, yeah, we did that, so you must fill out the form. You got to attend the meetings, you got to fill out the forms. And so we can demonstrate that those practices are effective at addressing water quality problems. And then we say what we've wanted in the area for the last 3 years. We've had no exceedances, and so we get to file a report that says completed management plan. We document all the things that we did. We say these many growers came, this many practices, and this is what the water quality is. And they send me a nice little letter back. I mean, we may have spent $50,000 a year hard-earned dollars getting to that point. But we get this little cheap one-page thing that says, yeah, great, you did good. You don't have to monitor, so we have to better now. But that's what it is. And so then we continue to track these your practices through the every 5-year farm plan. So here are the consequences. Unfortunately, it's not just my mom throwing her sand down the hallway and hitting me in the back of it, telling me to knock it off. If you ever meet my mom, don't tell her I said it, okay? But there's been a determination, and we've gotten this from the regional board already, not officially, but unofficially they've notified that it's inadequate progress. I have a document that I've been reviewing, talking about this very thing. Time schedules have not been met. The 10 years have come and gone. And so when they make it official, then the executive officer, this is like the guy and the gal who runs the regional board for Region 5, they can do one of these things. They can develop and implement an edge of field monitoring study and plan study plan to characterize commodity-specific discharge and determine new management practices for growers to have to implement. So they're going to tell me, okay, you get the scientists, you hire the scientists, you get all the equipment you need, you go out to this area, and we want you to start doing studies. Oh, and by the way, the executive officer is going to notify growers that you're part of this, that you're going to have to notify us when you spray chemicals. And we're going to have to be there on site when you do that, because then we're going to do studies based on how you apply chemicals and to find out if it's being spread, how it's moving off the farm. And we're going to do this multiple times until we get enough data, enough high quality, extremely expensive data to demonstrate that, you know, the practices they're using aren't working at all. And we're going to say, here's the practice you should be doing. And then the regional board is going to require you to use that practice. And if not, you'll be bounced out of the coalition and you'll be on your own dealing with them. It could be that the executive officer could have on-site verification by the regional board of management and evaluation of your adequacy. For regional board, several years ago, we went out to one of our growers, a good guy. I love the guy. He's a great guy. You're all great guys. But they picked him. And he kind of agreed. We called him ahead of time. Hey, would you mind if they come do an inspection? He said, no, come on. He was ready for him. So they had this farm plan that he had. And that farm, we used to go every year. That farm plan said cotton. So they go out there, the regional board, and they got their little backpacks on and their water bottles, and they're ready for a really, really big day. You know, they're going to do something. And I don't mean to degrade these people. Some of them are nice folk. I make them seem so bad. But they're out there, and the first thing they said was, where's the cotton? Well, it came out of rotation. I'm growing was corn. And folks, it created a major firestorm. I got phone calls. One from the grower, hey, I think something's wrong. Wow, what's wrong? Well, I didn't have cotton. They were expecting cotton. I got corn. The market said grow corn, I guess. I don't know. So I'm getting phone calls from the regional board, and they're really upset. And then I'm flabbergasted. It's like, yeah, that farm plan was last year. It doesn't look forward, it looks backwards. So I don't know what to tell you, you know. What I'm getting at, these are the people that are going to come out and look at things. They don't know what they're looking at. But they have the right, if we don't get these things done, to come out and do those kinds of inspections and then tell you, here's what needs to be done. See, they can't make you, and David, you have to give me a nod if I'm correct on this or not. They can't make you change practices. But if they deem that you're a threat to water quality, they can issue a cease and desist order, That's very drastic. But they can. And so, once again, we don't want these people, they're like a loose cannon, a loose gun. We don't want them involved at that level with this. Or they can go, this is like the nuke option. They can invoke individual WDRs. They can revoke your coverage in the coalition, and you have to become an individual. Several years ago, a very, very big grower in California, he's in our coalition and many other coalitions. He was going to buck the system. He tried it on his own. And he got to the point where he had to spend tens of thousands of dollars, and he decided it wasn't worth it. And he would come back and join the coalition. So going the individual way is not helpful to you. But again, I wanted to focus on what they could do if we don't get these things done. So here's what the order requires. And this is very generalized. You're required to implement water quality management practices as necessary to protect water quality as described in the general order. You're all supposed to have the general order at your fingertips. If you don't have one on file, I can send you a PDF of it, you can print it, I can point you to a website where you can get it. But if they come out on inspection, that's one of the things they're going to ask you, where's your general order? I suppose you're supposed to know it chapter and verse and be able to quote from it like the Bible. I don't know. But again, that's a requirement of farming in California. You have to implement practices that are protective of water quality. You're required to implement effective sediment discharge and erosion prevention. Some of you don't have that issue. Maybe you farm on very flat ground, very clayey type soil that doesn't move a lot. It may not be an issue for you. Some of you farm in upgraded areas. You've got sandy loams and such that are prone to runoff. You're required to manage it. You're required to protect the environment, the water quality from sediment. And why do we want to not have sediment? One is that they have to filter it out to drink the water. Secondly, and more importantly, it transports pesticides. And so it's not just locally. Metropolitan Water District in Southern California, they complain a lot about pesticides that they have to remove out of their water system that come down the San Luis Canal. You say, well, I don't drain to that canal. Well, you do. San Joaquin River to the Delta, the pumps pick it up and put it in the San Luis Canal and the Delta Mendoza Canal. And so you're on the hook for that as well. So look, there's, the best way to comply is, implement management practices that eliminate discharges from your farm. If you got alfalfa and you put some kind of pesticide on it, folks, hold the boards. Don't release the water. You say, well, yeah, but I'm waterlogged. Well, do better on your irrigation schedule. I'm not a farmer. I don't know how to instruct you how to be better in that management, those kind of things. I realize you got, almonds and you've got micro sprayers, and you're doing your best with, you're not moving water off. How about the guy applying your pesticides? A very well-respected grower in this coalition told me face-to-face in a group of people, when I said it's your responsibility for that third-party guy you hired to spray in your orchard, it's your responsibility. And he said, no, it's not. And he turned and walked away from me. Yes, it is. In every aspect, it's your responsibility. Just because you hired somebody doesn't relieve you of your responsibility to make sure that pesticide was applied in your orchard, on your fields, and wherever it is you applied it, in a way that protects water quality. I expect that you'll be getting mentioned, or you may be getting reached out to from your commercial sprayers. We're going to engage them. I don't have any authority with them, but we're going to engage them. But I'm going to give them your name and your branch that you applied chemicals on their property, because this is public records, and it's just between us and them. And the information they have that we're going to give them, they already have because you've contracted with them. We're not going to give up anything new. I'm going to tell them that you could have put your client in a problem didn't spray it correctly. We're not going to accuse them, but we're going to let them know and be on record that we know you're there, and the regional board knows you're there. And the regional board has told me they're going to be working with the ag commissioner to get these guys more involved in this process. So it behooves you to make sure the guy is doing it correctly. Well, that being said, this morning I'm going to introduce to you my dear friend David Corey, who's a gentleman, a knowledgeable guy, scholarly, all-around good guy. And we really appreciate him this morning. David.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. I know you don't have a choice, but thank you for coming anyway. My name is David Corey, farmer down in the CCID area. So all these forms that Orville's talked about, I fill them out myself. And even though I've worked with regional board for years trying to develop them and make them as streamlined and sort of as understandable as possible, even when I sit down and fill them out, I scratch my head and think, oh man, this is a difficult thing to do. So I feel your pain, but realize that this is, as Orville said, one of the things that we need to do. And there are some concrete things that we're trying to accomplish in terms of improving water quality associated with it. So it's not all bureaucratic nonsense, but there's some of that weaved in there. So I'm going to be talking today about nitrates in groundwater. This is one of the big issues that the state is focusing on over the last really 10 years, is really trying to control nitrate discharge to groundwater. Early on, it was really looking at pesticides and surface water issues, but the groundwater issue was really taken over a lot of the issues the regional board were dealing with. This is just a map of the Central Valley, looking at generally the higher elevation or higher concentrations of nitrates in groundwater. This is high level, just looking at generally speaking where they are. There's a lot of, as you see, a lot of the red spots are in the Southern Valley, but there's also some red spots in our area as well. This is again estimates of what these nitrogen levels are in the groundwater. There's certainly localized conditions in any one of these areas that could have high levels of nitrates. So the regional board is looking for all growers to control their nitrates discharge to the groundwater, not just those areas that happen to be in red. Regional board, in looking the tasks that they set us out on, trying to understand what's happening in the underground, it's really a difficult task. The groundwater, water quality in groundwater is incredibly complex. There's surface and groundwater interactions. When you have rivers that go through there, you've got recharge from the rivers, you've got recharge from farming and overlying ground issues. You've got what's going on in the hydrology and the climate. You've got land use, other land uses other than just farming. You've got the dynamics of the groundwater itself, and as water moves through the vadose zone and getting into groundwater, there's different processes that take place. So it's really difficult to understand what's taking place in the groundwater itself. But that's the task that the regional board has been given, to protect groundwater, and that's the task that's been assigned to us, to try and estimate what are the impacts of grower impacts on nitrates and other constituents in groundwater. But on this talk, we're really focusing on nitrates. So how does agriculture impact nitrates in groundwater? It's pretty straightforward in terms of this level of the diagram, right? We all farm. In order to farm, we have to put some sort of nitrates on, or nitrogen on the ground. And when you do that, you can't be 100% efficient. It is just impossible to be 100% efficient. Even if you're drip irrigation and feeding it directly to there, you're not going to be 100% efficient. But what we can be is as efficient as we possibly can. So when you're putting nitrogen on your fields, fertilizers, you're irrigating that. Inevitably, some of that nitrogen will leach with the water, whether it's your irrigation water or rainfall that hits the ground later. It will push past the bottom of the root zone so the crop can't use it anymore, and it will move through what they call as the vadose zone, which is basically that block of ground of earth between the top of between the root zone and the aquifer itself. So the nitrogen will move through there. it changes, has a lot of physical processes that take place, and will ultimately make it to groundwater. What we're trying to do, and what the regional board's asking us to do, is to minimize that leaching of nitrates to groundwater. Again, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. A lot of it is efficient irrigation. You can look at timing of your nitrogen application rates and those sorts of things, but trying to be as efficient with nitrogen is really what you need to do, what they're looking at us to do. Orville earlier talked about the INMP summary reports, those nitrogen use reports that you fill out that looks at how many pounds of nitrogen are you putting on each crop, what's your yield, and those sorts of things. Those reports that you're turning in is the basis for how we're calculating and estimating what the nitrate leaching to groundwater might be. You're looking at what's applied, we're looking at what's removed in the crop, and then we're running it through a model that is designed to estimate what actually happens to that. It takes into account the soil type, the aquifer, other recharge issues. There's all of those complicated issues I talked about in the earlier slide. We're trying to look at all of those dynamics and figure out what's actually happening to this nitrogen when you put it on the ground. One of the things that I'm sure Orville talked about in terms of those reports, it's really important that you turn those reports in. He talked about the consequences of doing that. Because I was late, I don't know if he mentioned some of those consequences of not turning in forms. They can fine you $1,000 a day for being late with a form. Now, keep in mind, they won't get around to actually coming after you for this for a year or more after you've missed the deadline. So you could end up with a $365,000 fine for not turning in a form, because they can fine you $1,000 a day, and it doesn't.
Have they ever done that before?
They've done that they've had some really onerous fines on folks who didn't sign up for the coalitions. Don't remember if they've done it on the forms, on these INMP summary reports, but that's the next step. I've been in regional board meetings in which growers didn't sign up for the program to begin with. And they had some pretty compelling stories as to why they didn't sign up, because, well, I won't go into the details of it, but they were pretty compelling stories. And basically the approach of the board members, this comes in front of a subcommittee of the board, and it actually is authorized by the board itself, but it's actually the board members. Their approach is, look, the fines are going to be incredibly harsh because we know we can't catch everybody. So we're going to set an example of those who happen to come up in front of the board. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollar fines for relatively small acreage for not signing up. And the same methodology is likely what they will use for someone who doesn't turn in their forms. Now, you'll get some notices, but you'll get the notice of the coalition. At some point it'll get escalated where you get notices from the regional board directly. If first off, you shouldn't ignore the notices from the coalition, because that's the friendly reminder. When you get to the level of the regional board and they issue a notice directly to you, definitely don't just throw it in the round filing cabinet. You need to deal with it, work with the coalition, resolve this matter, because the longer you delay, the worse it's going to be for you. So anyway, that's a little bit digression, but those forms are important to turn in. What we're looking at in using those forms is we're coming up with township leaching estimates. So we're trying to look at, on a township basis, how much is leaching from irrigated agriculture to the groundwater. We're required to come up with this formula that uses the INP summary data to figure out how much is actually potentially leaching. We are also required to come up with targets, so on each township that's in a high vulnerability area, we have to estimate how much nitrogen can that aquifer handle without exceeding the water quality objective. In township, 6 miles by 6 miles, so we're looking at 23,000 acres in that area, in that township. If the township is not in compliance with the targets, the coalition is going to have to work with all those growers within that township to figure out how we can be more efficient with our nitrogen and reduce that leaching to groundwater. If we can't figure it out, we'll end up in a similar place that Orville talked about with the surface water quality management plans. They will slowly and surely enforce against us and make it more and more difficult in terms of regulations to be able to farm, putting more onerous regulations on how much you can farm and trying to, although they technically can't dictate how you farm, they can dictate, they can tell you how you should not farm. So it's essentially the same thing. We have some flexibility right now to try and figure out what's the most efficient way to meet these objectives. But if we can't meet these objectives, we can't, whether it's surface water or groundwater, they will force us to comply over time. Now, that slow enforcement action may make you believe that it's not going to happen. Ultimately, they will enforce. They have no alternative but to do that, because that's their mandate from the law, and the state legislature will support that. So these are just the townships within the coalition. We're looking at this at a township level when we're looking at what's coming in the INP summer reports. There's another aspect to this as well, that if you're in an area that is, according to our targets and our values, you actually are in compliance on a township level, the regional board also expects each grower to achieve a minimum nitrogen use efficiency, basically based on agronomic ideas. So they want everybody to have a minimum nitrogen use efficiency. We're currently trying to work up these, what they call acceptable ranges. So it will be a range of nitrogen use efficiency for different crops. So this would be crop specific. They want every grower, even if you're in an area that isn't impacted by groundwater, to meet these minimum requirements. So it will be different by different crops. Different crops have, it's easier to achieve certain nitrogen use efficiencies than others. So we're working at that on a crop specific level. When those get developed, there'll be two sort of metrics that you'll be looking at in your groundwater and nitrogen use. There'll be the target, that's what you've actually estimated to discharge, or what we can discharge, versus the value of what you've actually discharged. And then there'll also be this acceptable range issue, which is sort of an agronomic minimum threshold that every grower has to meet. So just to keep in mind, we're not alone in this fight. And this regulatory process that regional board has, there are a lot of different sources of nitrogen that leach into groundwater. It's not just agriculture, although we're one of the largest segments, because we cover the entire Central Valley, really, and there's a lot of different places where it can leach. But there's also, when you look at this, there's agriculture, there's dairy, there's city wastewater where they leach to groundwater, there's food processors, other various discharges of nitrates to groundwater. All of these dischargers are being regulated to make sure they can control and achieve water quality objectives in groundwater. So again, why do we care about nitrates in groundwater, right? This is really a drinking water issue. They're concerned about the health impacts of drinking that groundwater. Because we all have domestic wells out here. A lot of us who's in this room have domestic wells. So we're really looking to protect that groundwater use and that drinking water use. One of the I guess options that they've given us is to form a management zone with other industries, other discharges of nitrates, to get together, form a management zone, and take authority over a groundwater basin and say, okay, we're going to work collectively with the dairies, with the cities, with the food processors to try and collectively minimize our discharges to groundwater. This management zone approach does a lot of things for agriculture, right? Rather than having to meet our water quality objectives and meet at the bottom of the root zone immediately, it will give us more time to actually comply with these regulations of discharging the groundwater. It will be the least burdensome way is to form and join these management zones, and because a lot of times it gives us more time to figure out how we can be more efficient with our groundwater, with our nitrogen use. One of the big things that this does, we have to, again, organize with other discharges of nitrogen, but also the first step in this process when we've taken ownership, and this is sort of the big bargain that we made with the regional board, is within the basin, within the management zone, we've agreed to test wells, all domestic wells, we'll go out and try and have a testing program where you can test domestic wells, not just on-farm wells, but every domestic well in the entire management zone, to see if it's high in nitrates. If it's high in nitrates, we have to supply substitute water to those households so that they have usable drinking water. So the basic trade is, look, if you resolve the immediate drinking water needs of the domestic water users within your area, we're going to give you more time to figure out how you can manage your nitrogen use, minimize the leaching to groundwater, and ultimately restore those groundwater basins. Those efforts will be quite expensive, right? We have to go out and get outreach to different households to get them to test their wells. If they're tested and they're above the objective, we have to supply to substitute water. This will increase our costs significantly moving forward, but it's significantly better than the alternative, which is the regional board would come in and say, you have to meet 10 milligrams per liter at the bottom of the root zone immediately. Frankly, we can't do that. It's not really achievable right now. So this option of a management zone is the least burdensome way we can achieve these, gives us more time to comply, and it also solves the immediate needs of those folks who have nitrates, groundwater, their drinking water is impacted with nitrates. So I think that's all I have for my... I talked through one of the slides, but basically what I covered there. Again, we're looking at immediate needs, trying to test wells, but also trying to deal with the control our nitrates and ultimately bring these aquifers into compliance with drinking water standards. So, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. All right.
Verification question number 3. Question: will growers in some townships be required to increase nitrogen use efficiency to achieve groundwater targets? The answer: yes. Again, the question: will growers in some townships be required to increase nitrogen use efficiency to achieve groundwater targets? The answer: yes.
So basically, this slide is basically looking at the on-farm drinking water requirements that we have to conduct annual testing of drinking water wells that are on your parcels itself on the parcels that's enrolled in the irrigated lands program. This is different from what the management zone approach is. That management zone is testing every domestic well across the entire coalition, whether it's on ILRP enrolled parcel or not. If it's high in nitrates, we have to figure out how to give them different wells. We have to report that on the ILRP lands. We have to report that to the regional board. So we got the next farm plans will be in 2025 for the farm evaluation plans. I talked about the farm groundwater protection formulas, values, and targets. We're generating those. We use the INP summary data to come up with the value. We're comparing it with this model calculated target that we have on a township level, and we're going to be comparing those, what's actually being discharged on a township level to the target itself. And if we're not meeting those targets, we're going to have to work with the growers within that township to become more efficient and actually meet those numbers. I talked about acceptable ranges, and then the management zone where we really, gives us more time to comply. So again, just one final thing from my perspective, make sure when you get the forms from the coalition, as painful as it might be, sit down and fill them out accurately. If you need help working through that, your districts and the coalitions can help you fill it out. As I often do, I put these things off because I don't want to do it until the last minute, and then I'm trying to furiously put it together at the last minute and get turned into Oracle so he doesn't give me a sad face. It's often more difficult to put these things together than you might think they are. Even for me, who's intimately involved in developing them, you know, it all doesn't, your fields don't always fit exactly right as you want it to be, so do it a little bit early so you might have some time to actually fix things if you, and meet those deadlines. All right.
These were just some this slide, just some highlights of changes that have happened since the last time we encountered each other right before COVID. Are there overall any questions that need to be answered? I'm always available to you. I just want to leave this thought in your mind. One thing, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. It's coalition day. That's why we're not coming to you directly, individually. We're looking at this in a holistic group type of sense. When you're invited to a focused outreach meeting, we're going to call it invitation. It's not an invitation. It's not a summons. I don't summons people. I don't like to be summoned, and I'll never summons you. But it's more than an invitation. You have to attend. And if you got a good reason why you can't attend, because I understand, we offer you kind of like one day, and we're trying a couple of times, but sometimes it doesn't meet your schedule. Call me. Don't just blow it off. Call me, and we'll see what we can do to arrange something so that you can get credit for being in that meeting. What we got to do, we got to get you attending the meeting, and then you got to fill out the form. So I want to thank you today. Before you leave, I want to thank CCID, Central California Irrigation District. They sent us a nice group of ladies, Marcella and Kaylin, to help get you signed in. We appreciate them being here today. I want to thank David Corey, his good friend, and thanks for being here. And we're lucky to have him on our team. This is a really, I know I kid him, this is a really smart guy. I lean on him a lot. He's been in the program from the beginning. He's on our side. He's trying to help us. He's not just an attorney. He's not just a consultant, but he's a farmer also. So he always enters the room with that agronomic hat on, knowing what's best for farming. And I really appreciate him being here this morning. Appreciate you being here. I want to thank my coworker, Friedrich, for being here, Summers Engineering employee. He meant to help us with video. He's a good guy. You talk to him on the phone. I sent him to you because I know you're going to yell at me, but he's got that voice that you don't want to yell at that guy. He said, there's something about that guy, I don't want to yell at him. No, he's just a good guy. We're glad to have him on our team. Thanks for being here today. No, we appreciate it. Welcome. So when you leave out, make sure you get a form. Make sure you get that. It's just a little certificate we put together. It says, yeah, I attended. Check the box, those banners. Put your initial on it. Put it in your file, and it'll be there. That gives you credit for being at the meeting. If you didn't get signed in, get signed in. If you dropped your cards, the white postcard that came, if you drop one for every entity that you farm for, you're signed in. If there was an entity that you represent that you didn't have a card for, make sure you get on that information sheet, the sign-in sheet, so we can get that entity credit. So again, thank you. There's contact information. We really appreciate you being here today. You're dismissed. Thank you.
Please remember to transfer the 3 answers to the video verification form, and using the instructions on the form, return it to the coalition. And if you need further assistance with the verification form, contact Friedrich Fourier at 559-582-9237 or at his email address below. Thank you.